Sometimes a life's journey is the people you meet along the way. For me, it's like meeting new friends and seeing what sports teams they like and if they're any different than what you like and all that. So, you know, talking with like getting to know black people and what sports they like. Like I work with a guy by the name of Calvin Singh, who's a giant Raptors fan, of all the Raptors stuff, and me and him talk Raptors and all that. My good buddy Bill Lang, and knowing that he's a Blue Jays fan like me, knowing he's a New England Patriots fan like me, knowing he's a Raptors fan like me, and knowing he's a fan like me is pretty good. And unfortunately, we had disagree on the CFL, but lots of people don't care about the CFL. But basically, this is about a buddy of mine by the name of Jeremiah Hislop. He's a pretty cool guy. He plays in my Thursday night ball hockey league at Benton Church. He's pretty cool. He's studying to be an optometrist. He's in school of optometry, and he's a big guy in British Columbia and all that. And he's native, which is pretty impressive. That I finally got to connect with him and all that. And he's from the Vancouver area. So this is basically for him and also for the fact that this video is about the year after a gigantic riot and all that. My introduction probably would have been like sports teams that riot win or lose, and then the next year what happens to their expectations. But yeah, this team exceeded expectations and actually won the President's Trophy for the number one team. Unfortunately, though, they didn't go far in the 2012 playoffs. Really didn't go far. So this one's for you, Jeremiah. We're talking about the 2011-12 Vancouver Canucks. Big what if. Hello out there, we're on the air. It's Cutter, what if NHL time? Tensions blow, the whistle blown, and the pucks go down the ice. Some teams just want to win the cup and do it with a smile. Hey, that is cool. Up on the River Nile. Oh, the good old hockey game. Who will come out on top? Will a team get through the cup to the cup by any means necessary? Oh, the good old hockey game. It's the best game you can name. And I'm have no shame. I will simulate those hockey games. Woo! So, what do you want to know about the Vancouver Canucks? Well, the city of Vancouver was a pioneer in the Pacific Coast Hockey Association, which at times challenged for the Stanley Cup. Back before 1927, um, the Western hockey leagues, like the Pacific Coast and the Western League, would have send their champions to try to challenge the NHL champion or the NHA champion back in the day of winning the Stanley Cup, which was kind of a challenge trophy as it was his first intention. In 1915, the Vancouver Millionaires were the Stanley Cup champions, so technically they have a Stanley Cup, but not in the NHL traditional sense. The city of Vancouver was a pretty good team in the Pacific Coast League, but unfortunately it folded in 1926. Vancouver still had some minor league teams, and there were rumors circulating that Vancouver was going to probably be one of the head lines and win a expansion team in 1967, but it didn't happen. Not only that, no Canadian team got involved. So Canada felt pissed off that they would expand to the United States. But Vancouver persisted. When the Oakland Seals were having troubles, Vancouver's like, we'll take the team, we'll take on the funding. Nope. We're giving the money to Oakland. We're keeping this team in California because we want two teams in California, not just one. Because, LA and Oakland. So Vancouver stewed. But thanks to Vancouver getting a little bit pissed off, the NHL decided that they and the city of Buffalo, who also lost an expansion team under weird circumstances, would get the next expansion. So the two teams, Vancouver and Buffalo, would start in 1970. The Canucks and Sabres would actually battle each other in a roulette wheel for the number one draft pick, which the Canucks thought they won, thinking that the wheel was landed on II, which means two. Unfortunately, Buffalo says it landed on 11, so practically They won the draw. So the Sabres got Gilbert Perreault first overall. Vancouver didn't do that badly. Dale Talon wasn't that bad of a defenseman. Sure, he went to play golf and was Chicago's general manager for many years in the rebuilding years of the 2010s. But still, I mean, can't hurt the guy. So the Canucks were decent and all that. But in 1982, a magical run captivated the city. They were crappy in their division. They had to face the Calgary Flames in the first round of the playoffs, and thanks to a Tiger Williams goal, they eliminated the Flames. The Canucks had a lucky hop when Los Angeles shocked Edmonton in the first round, and it would be Canucks Kings. Both really crappy teams that had midseason coaching replacements. Harry Neale, yes, him of the Hockey Night in Canada fame, he was the Vancouver head coach, but unfortunately he got angry at a Quebec fan and ran up the stands to get that fan. Neale was practically suspended for much of the playoffs and the regular season. So Roger Nielsen, yes, Captain Video himself and former Leaf coach, got to be the main guy. So using Roger Nielsen's stuff, the Canucks beat the Kings in the second round and then faced the powerful Chicago Blackhawks with Tony Esposito still in the net. Chicago thought they had it made, but Vancouver took care of them in 5 games. What's worse, so in Game 2 in Chicago, after too many calls going against the Canucks, Roger Nielsen had the brilliant idea to take a white towel, put it on a hockey stick, and raise it over his head like a white flag of mock surrender. The Canucks players also did the same thing, and Nielsen was booted from that game. However, the joke was on the NHL after Game 3. When Game 3 happened, Canucks fans brought white towels and waved them all around, starting the white towels tradition. It was Vancouver, not Winnipeg. The fact of the matter is that the Canucks shocked the Blackhawks and went to the Stanley Cup Finals only to be eaten alive by the New York Islanders. But Game 1 was close. I mean, they only lost in overtime. 33 seconds left in the first overtime. So the Canucks lost in 4 straight. King Richard Brodeur was just on frickin' fire. Came out of nowhere. Canucks could not replicate the magic. And then in 1994, they were the 7 seed in the new 1-8 system for playoffs. They would meet the Calgary Flames, who won the Pacific Division. The Canucks were doomed. They were down 3 games to 1. Pavel Bure was a good player and all that, with Jeff Courtnall and Trevor Linden, but the Canucks just couldn't do anything. But all of a sudden, something weird happened. Game 5, Jeff Courtnall scored in overtime. Okay, it's 3 games to 2. Game 6, back in Vancouver, Trevor Linden scored in overtime to force a Game 7 back in Calgary, April 30th of 1994, which was also the day when this 8 seed San Jose Sharks shocked everyone by taking care of the number 1 seed Detroit Red Wings. The Canucks, the 7 seed, would take on the 2 seed Flames. They go to overtime, and then Robert Reichel thought he scored the winning goal in overtime. No, the kick save in the beauty by Kirk McLean, one of the greatest saves in a playoff series ever. And then, of course, Vancouver double overtime. If I can channel my inner Don Whitman, I can. Brown, I had to Bure on net. He scores! Pavel Bure has won it for the Vancouver Canucks. It's a triple overtime hat trick for Vancouver. That was amazing. Not only did the Canucks come back from 3 games to 1 down in a series, which a lot of teams have done, they won every game in overtime. You're thinking, oh, that's nothing special. They could have made one easy slip in game 5, 6, or 7. They were done. That's hard to do, to go to overtime and win 3 straight overtime games. Heck, win 3 straight overtime games in a series. That's hard to do. How many teams can do that? So anyway, the Canucks would go on to beat Dallas and Toronto, much to my chagrin, of course, to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals against the New York Rangers. But the Canucks were resilient. They were down 3 games to 1 to the Rangers, 1 in New York in Game 5, 1 in Vancouver in Game 6. Could they pull off 2 3-1 comebacks in the same year? The answer is no. They were close, though, 3-2, and Martin Gelina and Nathan Lafayette both hit posts. And unfortunately, the Canucks lost that series. Unfortunately, though, Vancouver lost its identity as fans rioted it. It's pathetic and all that. Montreal did riot in '93 when they won the cup, but that was in celebration. Vancouver was in pissy mode. Vancouver would be also Rand's 2004. They thought they were good, but unfortunately, Todd Bertuzzi decided to be a dickwad and punch Steve Moore and all that. All Bertuzzi had to do was whack Moore on the shin or something like that in like the first period, and nothing bad. And then case closed. But no, Bertuzzi just had to be a dick. He lost the rest of the season in the playoffs, obviously, and the Canucks fell flat. They lost the division on the final day. They had to face the Calgary Flames, the Brazilian Calgary Flames, who had not won a playoff series in 15 years, but got revenge for '94 in '04 overtime. Martin Shelona, ironically, who played for the '94 Canucks in that playoff run, scored the goal for the Flames to send them to the next round and on to the finals. The Canucks were good. 2011, they looked good. They looked strong. They took care of Boston. Well, Vancouver got past San Jose on one of the most crazy overtime goals ever. Kevin Bieksa scored in double overtime in Game 5. However, people forgot that puck, people lost sight of the puck. It was shot off of a stanchion. It was not over the net, over the glass. And Bieksa was the only one to notice and slapped it into the net, sending the Canucks to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Boston Bruins. Things look good for Vancouver. Game 1, they won with like 16 seconds left. Game 2, they won 11 seconds into overtime. The Canucks were up 2-0, and then that freaking hit that by Aaron Rome on Nathan Horton just basically killed momentum and helped Boston out. Sure, Vancouver won Game 5 at home to be up 3-2, but they couldn't win in Boston to save their lives. Worst off, they lost Game 7 at home 4-0 to Boston, giving Boston their first Stanley Cup in 39 years. And then the fans went bananas, like terrible. A second riot happening. Jeez. Well, of course, I talked about the 2012 Vancouver Canucks. Recently, they've gone past the retirements of the Sedin brothers and Ryan Kessler and all that. They've been good with Brock Besser being a stalwart. They did decently in the 2024 playoffs, but not this year. So anyway, let's talk about the 2012 Canucks and a redo of their thing. All right, so the 2012 Canucks were their 42nd season in modern Canucks history. They were the defending Western Conference champions and three-time defending division champs. A lot of people said the Canucks were going to contend. I mean, yeah, they were one game short of the Stanley Cup, but they had the majority of their players and all that. Unfortunately, Luongo struggled a bit. But they had a good tandem of Luongo and Corey Schneider and all of that. So anyway, it looked pretty impressive. They won their second consecutive President's Trophy when they beat the Edmonton Oilers, and the Rangers lost on the final day. So the Canucks did it. They were the top seed in the Western Conference, and they were going to be good and all that. All they had to do was get past those 8-seed LA Kings. Of course, we're talking about some stuff. Nicholas Janssen was picked in the first round by the Canucks. They selected Frank Corrado. I think he's from the Kitchener Rangers, right? Hold on here. OHL. Oh, being returned to Sudbury. Oh, he played for Kitchener. He played half a year for the Kitchener Rangers. Sudbury traded him to the Rangers. I knew that. I was like, yeah, he was traded. I was right. Haha. Nevertheless, you know, Vancouver actually had Manitoba as their top minor league affiliate, but because the NHL was going back to Manitoba, Vancouver didn't have have an affiliate, but they signed with the Chicago Wolves. So regardless of that, yeah, the regular season they looked pretty impressive and all of that. But unfortunately, Vancouver not only had to deal with the problems to do after the riot, they lost Rick Rippon, who took his own life August 15th. In the division, they won 51 games, 22 losses, 9 ties, 111 points. They crushed the Northwest by 21 points. Nobody else in the Northwest made it to the playoffs. Calgary would have been the next team, but they lost. So it was LA versus Vancouver, 8-1. The Blues were close. But the Canucks did it by 2. So yeah, so then comes the Stanley Cup playoffs. And somehow, in some freaking way, Luongo sucked horribly at home. They were down 0-2. They decided to go with Corey Schneider in the nets. And the Canucks only won game 4, but lost on home ice 2-1. So they were 0-3 in overtime. And they really screwed up. So the 2012 Canucks cannot be trusted and all that. Ellen Finio set the record for franchise coaching wins with 247. Luongo set the most victories by a goalie with 212. I think he broke Kirk McLean's record. So yeah, a lot of things happened. Yeah, Frank Corrado. Transactions. Well, Vancouver got Zach Cassian for Cody Hodgson. They got Samuel Paulson from Columbus at the trade deadline. In October, they picked up Steven Reinbrecht for Marco Stern and Mikkel Samuelsson. And they traded away the rights to Christian Ehrhoff to the Islanders. Made some moves and all that, free agent signings. Nothing really, no, Michael Stern, but then they traded him. Yeah, Rick Rippon was going to play for the Winnipeg Jets, but then he did what he did. Anyhow, so that's all for the 2012 Canucks. What would happen if the Canucks actually got past the LA Kings and made it to the second round? So the Vancouver Canucks would have faced the Nashville Predators because everyone, well, the 2, 3, and 4 seeds all won their matches. So the Canucks would be number 1. So it'd be 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. So the Canucks would face the Nashville Predators and all that. And that would mean Phoenix would have faced St. Louis. So anyway, we're gonna go with Phoenix to take out St. Louis because Phoenix made the Western Conference Finals in real life. So Phoenix will face either Nashville or Vancouver in the set. Of course, we take out the Kings for this. So game 1 in Vancouver ended up being the Canucks 5, Nashville 4. High scoring first period. Canucks with 2 goals by Alex Edler and Dale Weiss, Sergei Kostichin and Mike Fisher for the Preds. Martin Ebrad made it 3-2 for Preds, Kostichin 4-2. But then in a 5-minute period, Kevin Bieksa, Alex Edler, and Dan Hamhuis doing his job. Edler, Kostichin, and Fisher are your stars of the game. But yeah. Game 2 sees the Canucks lose 3-1 as Kevin Klein and Colin Wilson scored in the first period for Nashville, Danny Sedin for Vancouver, but Mike Fisher ended it 3-1. As Rene, Fisher, and Luongo are your 3 stars of the game. So nice job by them. And then we head to Nashville for games 3 and 4. Game 3 ends up being a Nashville win on prolongation. Sergei Kostichin made it 1-0 Preds. Canucks Chris Higgins, then Sergei scored again, and then Hemho's 2-2. Alex Burrows and Nick Spaulding scoring. And then Shea Weber at 3:28 of overtime from the point, and Luongo couldn't do it. Kostichin, Weber, and Suter are your 3 stars. So the Canucks are in trouble. Go to game 4. And the Canucks win 4-2. So it's a 2-2 split. Headed back home. Martin Ebrad made it 1-0 Preds, and then Andre Kostichin. Ryan Kessler made it 2-1. Burles made it 2-2. Daniel Sedin makes it 3-2. And then Michael Samuelsson made it 4-2. As Danny Sedin, Ryan Kessler, and Alex Burles are your 3 stars. So 2-2 headed home. Game 5 sees the Canucks on home ice win as Alex Burles and Ryan Kessler both scored to make it 2 goals. Colin Wilson made it 2-1. Danny Sedin made it 3-1. Canucks leg 1 made it 3-2, and Henrik Sedin made it 4-2. So the Canucks have a 3-2 series lead. Henrik Kessler and Greg Nani are your 3 stars. Game 6 back in Nashville. And it would be the Canucks crushing the Nashville Predators 6-0 and getting their Stanley Cup semifinal date with the Coyotes. Daniel Sedin scored a hat trick. Hendrick scored. Sammy Salo, Alex Burrows. Yeah, not a lot of time for Mason Raymond or Andrew Alberts. Chris Tanev only played 3 minutes. Chris Tanev played for the 2012 Canucks. Preds, Ryan Fang. What a name. Roman Yossi, only 2 minutes. He was just a rookie. Paul Gostad, Charles Smithson. But yeah, Sedin, Luongo, and Kessler. Gabriel Bork and Alex Radulov actually were hurt. So it didn't work out. So the Predators would have gotten KO'd in 6 games by the Canucks. And then we shall change to the Phoenix Coyotes, who made the 2012 Stanley Cup semifinals in real life. As I said, that's kind of the reason why it'll be the Coyotes Canucks in the next round. Game one sees the Canucks win 2-0. Kessler with 2 goals, but Luongo yet another shutout after a shutout Nashville in Game 6. Luongo, Kessler, Mike Smith, your 3 stars. Game 2 sees the Canucks win again 3-0 as Burroughs, Bieksa, and Aaron Rome, remember that name, Jeffrey, made it 3-0. So Luongo with back-to-back shutouts, unreal, and over 180 minutes in real life. I mean, in the thing. Game 3. So the Canucks lose to Vancouver. Keith Yandel scoring 18 seconds in, breaking the 120-minute slump in that round. Keith Yandel made it 2-0 on power play. Langell and Hansel made it 4-0. Look bad. And Hendrik Sedin made it 4-1. Yandel, Smith, and Langell, your 3 stars. And it would be the Coyotes winning game 4 at home 4-2. So the Canucks are going back home 2-2. Rafi Torres and Korpikoski made it 2-0. Ray Whitney made it 3-0. Alex Burrows with 2 goals, but then Ekman Larson ended it. Mike Smith, Alex Burrows, and Ron Verbata are your 3 stars. Game 5 in Canucko Town sees the Canucks win 5-1. Denny Sedin gets a natural hat trick. Higgins scored. Cody Hodgson made it 5-1, and then Smith got replaced by Chris McElhaney. So yeah, Canucks scored 1 goal on Vancouver turf. Like the thing was 184 minutes, 164 minutes in Vancouver. Sedin, Hamhuis, and Luongo. Canucks, can they knock out the Coyotes? I say yes. And yes, Vancouver does win Game 6. They avoid their road woes. Sedin and Hamhuis scored. Sedin, Taylor Pyatt, Ryan Kessler, Anton Vermette, Ron Verbata. So it was 4-3. Kessler made it 5-3, and that was it. The Canucks are going to the Stanley Cup Finals against the New Jersey Devils. Sedin, Kessler, and Sedin. 3 stars. So the Canucks go back home. We shall change the away team. The 2012 Devils. What been your guys? Game 1 of the 2012 finals this way would be the Canucks winning 6-1. 5 goals in the first period. 2 by Daniel Sedin, 1 by Hendrick, Bieksa, and Kessler. So Brodeur was replaced in the net. Cody Hodgson made it 6-0. Sikora made it 6-1, but that was it. Vancouver would have crushed the Devils in divine powder. The 2 Sedins and Ryan Kessler are your 3 stars. Game 2 would see the Devils pull a rabbit out of their hat, winning 6-5 in overtime. Zach Parise scored for the Devils. David Clarkson in the first. Michael Samuelson, Danny Sedin, and Sammy Salo made it. Oh yeah, David Clarkson. Kitchener. Second period, Danny Sedin made it 4-2 Canucks, but Ilias Subras and Ilias again made it 5-4. Kessler scored early in the third. Nothing happened. And then even though David Clarkson got penalized, it didn't matter. Salvador de Palmieri to Patrick Elias, and the Devils win 6-5 to split the first 2 games. Elias, Brodeur, and Kessler are your 3 stars. Heading to Devils country, it would be the Canucks winning 4-2. As Yannick Hansen, Danny Sedin, Alex Burrows, and Ryan Kessler scoring. Elias and Ryan Carter for New Jersey. Danny Sedin, Ryan Carter, and Patrick Elias, your 3 stars. At 2-1 Canucks, it would be The Canucks winning in overtime in New Jersey, 6-5. Sedin and Parise scoring the goals. Then Kessler, Elias, Larson, Ponikarovsky. So the Devils were up 4-2 after 2 periods. Yannick Hansen would score 2 goals by himself to tie the game. Your Supers made it 5-4. Canucks had to score again. Hodgson did that. A couple of Canuck penalties, Chris Higgins and Andrew Alberts, but they still couldn't take advantage of it, the Devils. Then Edler to Cody Hodgson to make it 6-5. Doing his job. Edler, Kessler, and Hodgson, your 3 stars. Yeah, it's weird that Hodgson's the hero, and yet he gets relegated 3rd-star status. Don't know why. Game 5, is this the end of Stanley Cup? This is it. This is it, the apocalypse. Oh, whoa. So the Canucks crushed the Devils 5-1 to win the series in 5 games. So the Canucks would have won the Stanley Cup, taken care of business this time. Patrick Gillies scored for the Devils, but Samuelson, Hodgson, Danny Sedin, Kessler, and Danny Sedin would be your hero. I can be your hero, baby. Kessler, Danny, and Samuelson, your 3 stars. So Ryan Kessler and crew would have, well, I think Luongo would have, yeah, well, Luongo would have won the Conn Smythe because of all his great home playoff appearances and some road bumps. But hey, who doesn't have road bumps? So anyway, the Canucks would have won the Stanley Cup, and Jeremiah would have been one happy dude. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.